everybody, and welcome to Raising Vibrations and to the monthly forecasts. Hope you're doing well. And in today's video, I'm going to be helping you understand a little bit about aspects and phases. And this is my little piece on how I do my little forecasts in a unique way. So aspects and phases is a way that evolutionary astrology uses to measure the cycles that planets have in relationship to themselves, okay, and to other planets, pardon me. So what happens is you've got two planets, say for instance Pluto and Venus, and what evolutionary astrology will do is they will take those two archetypes and measure the relationship that they have between each other, and then from that measurement and from that relationship establish what type of phase and what type of evolutionary condition those planets carry within each other. And it's really fascinating because when you begin to measure your planets in relationship to other planets, you begin to see the development of how you actually experience your life through these aspects and phases. Now, I've got a little slideshow over here quickly that I want to show you in terms of what is the philosophy behind aspects and phases and what type of methodology do we use to actually measure this, okay? So I'm going to show you that right now. Okay, so what you're looking at is two pictures. On the left-hand side over here, you can see this is about life itself, okay? The first thing that we understand is that everything is in a cyclic formation. Everything is moving through time and space. And so because of that, it is not separate that when you look at two planets or three planets in a birth chart, that they are also in this life cycle. There is a life cycle that each planet has. And each planet in relationship to another is reflecting where that life cycle is. It's no different than measuring a new moon, a first quarter moon, a last quarter moon, and a full moon. They're exactly the same thing. We just do it with planets now. And you can see that when you have a new moon, there's a new intention. When you have a full moon, we're coming into a halfway completion cycle. Again, phasal relationship and life, how it's evolving. The picture on the right-hand side reflects to us that everything is in relationship to everything else. Everything. Okay, it's like a revolving door. The moment that you walk through a revolving door, as you're moving outward, somebody from the outside is coming inward, and that door is revolving us around it. And it's like as one energy moves outward like that, another one's moving in. And everything is in a consistent relationship with everything else. And so because of that, it's natural for us to understand that when we look at planets in our birth chart, there's a natural cycle in terms of awareness, and there's a natural phasal relationship that exists between planets. And when we measure that, what we get is this beautiful harmonic dynamic of where we are in our consciousness and how that has been developed. Okay? And the next thing is how do we actually then establish and what methodology do we use in order to understand these aspects and phases? Well, in evolutionary astrology, you work with the planets, okay? So you've got Mercury, Venus, you've got Mars, you've got Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto, okay? And then you have the sun. Now, in this diagram, everything revolves around the sun. So when you measure something in evolutionary astrology terms, there's always a focal point, right? There's a focal point, and there's always a planet that's in relationship to that focal point. And the way that you understand what focal point you have to look at, you understand the relationship that these planets have to the sun. So the sun will always be a focal point, okay? That's so when you say, for instance, want to understand the phasal relationship between Neptune and Jupiter, well, then it has a little bit of a different cycle, but still the same. When you measure planets in relationship to each other, you're measuring the fastest moving planet in relationship to the slowest moving planet. The fastest moving planet in relationship to the slowest moving planet. So therefore, if I had to say, for instance, ask you, what is the phasal relationship between Jupiter and Neptune? You would go, Jupiter is the fastest moving planet, Neptune's the slowest moving planet, and so therefore, Neptune would be your focus point, because the slowest moving planet is always the focus point. And that's the key that I want you to take away from this conversation. When you measure aspects and phases in your chart, you're measuring two things. One, if you're measuring it against the sun will always be a focus point. So you're always looking for the focus point. And that will always be the sun if you're comparing it against something. Secondly, if you're comparing two planets with each other, you always measure the slowest moving planet as the focus point. So what happens now is you go, okay, I've identified that Neptune is the slowest moving planet. Jupiter's in relationship to it. And so then how do I understand how this works? Very simple. You get a little chart. And this is courtesy of the Evolutionary Astrology glossary, an ebook. And as you can see here on the chart, you've got this whole entire thing. New phase, crescent phase, first quarter phase, gibbous phase, all these phases. And each phase represents an aspect of development. So what you would do is you would take your slowest moving planet and put it at the 0. You would take your fastest moving planet and mathematically calculate the degrees of separation. Okay, so if Neptune's here and Jupiter, say for instance here, you would see that Jupiter is exactly 90 degrees, 90 clicks away from Neptune. And by understanding that phasal relationship, you would go, okay, it's a crisis in action square. And this is what I love about it so much. When we look at squares in astrology, we're like, oh, it's a square. But in EA, there's two types of squares. There's a crisis in action square and a crisis in consciousness square. And they're remarkably different in the sense. Okay, so you can actually try and read your chart. So, I've got Pluto square Mars as an example. The way that Pluto square Mars is going to work in your chart, if it was crisis in consciousness versus crisis in action, are going to be remarkably different. Now, when you have that power within your own awareness to apply that to your chart, you can actually see what you're specifically looking at in terms of your evolutionary development. And it's really, really fascinating. So the next time you begin to understand your chart in terms of aspects and phases, I highly encourage you to learn about aspects and phases, to go and investigate it. And part of my astrology school, I actually teach this when I educate anybody that's wanting to understand evolutionary astrology. So this is something that when you really want to get into astrology, it's something you don't like miss, because it's so empowering. I'll give you a quick example again, just before we jump into this, okay? Let's say, for instance, I have Jupiter and I'm measuring Mars and Jupiter, okay? We know that Jupiter is the slowest moving planet in relationship to Mars. So Jupiter stands there, and we will say that Mars is exactly 300 degrees, okay, away from Jupiter. In other words, Mars has gone all the way around the astrology chart like that because it's moving in that motion, and it gets all the way to that 300 degrees over there. Now, Mars is what is called in a last quarter phase in relationship to Jupiter. So when you look at Mars and Jupiter in the chart and you understand that phasal relationship, you can actually see that the soul's desires in this lifetime, this is the evolutionary astrology, the soul's desires in this lifetime are actually evolving through individuating, in other words, finding and breaking out of the mold of belief systems that they used in the past and allowing us to see perspectives from different unique points of views. That's the way that Mars and Jupiter, in a very plain way, would be operating in somebody's chart. Now, you come into a world that is very like homogenized and very sort of like, this is how truth is and this is what it's got to be. And you put somebody in that's natural tendency is to not follow those rules. Can you begin to see the way that we as human beings are so complex? That's why we have a lot of people in the world saying, well, I'm an atheist, because most of them have got phasal relationships that are breaking down, that are not listening to the general consensus. How much do we accept other people for having their own evolutionary degree? We don't understand it, so therefore we judge it. And this is the type of dynamics that we can get into when we understand more of who we are as a human race to alleviate the chaos that we've got. Food for thought. Hello, my Capricorn friends, and welcome to your sun sign forecast for the month of March 2017. Hope you're well, and of course, I hope that you enjoyed your introduction video and how evolutionary astrology maps the cycles of planets called aspects and phases, and how you can get a better understanding of where you are in an evolutionary direction. I also teach that, by the way, in my astrology schools. So, of course, if you want to learn about that type of stuff, I've actually got a class starting on the 11th of March. In the description below, in your YouTube, in the comments, etc., there's a link to sign up for that. Otherwise, you're more than welcome to send me an email if you've got some questions you'd like me to answer, and I'll be happy to do that for you as well. Okay. All right, so let's have a look. What's going on for you this month, Capricorn? We'll start off with Pluto. And Pluto represents to us the unconscious emotional evolution, okay? And for you, the Capricorn constellation, it's been evolving an entirely new sense of identity, okay? A completely new way of relating to yourself on every single level. The whole entire Capricorn archetype is readjusting itself and changing itself and evolving. And so for you, this is about just exploration, just about trying new things out and really, really getting in touch with who and what makes you feel as if this is the right thing. It's about gut responses, okay? I feel that March is very much a month focused on Venus, okay? And the reason why I feel this way is because the way that we are evolving currently right now is we're actually in a huge transition. And if you have a look at the bottom of your chart over here, you can actually see that all of the planetary energies are in your solar third house, and they're all in the constellation Pisces. And by the end of this month, all of that will be there. And this is the transition between letting go of the past and allowing the new beginning phase to take place. And you can actually see it beautifully over here in terms of the phasal relationships between these planets. Mars is in a new phase relationship to Uranus, new insights, new direction, and Venus is in a balsamic to Uranus and Mars, which means that we're completing something here and we're pioneering something new. So here's the completion. So for you, this is about a way of relating to yourself on a communicating level. Okay, this has very much been about how you communicate. You've been seeing how other people communicate. You've been learning about this, and you've really been getting in touch with a more transcendental way of expression. All right. But with Venus and Mars being in your fourth house, you've been really, really looking to get in touch with a sense of identity. The home has very been a place for you, and you're really trying to see how you inwardly relate to yourself and how that's changing for you in a very big way. So go ahead, look, okay. Venus goes retrograde in the 4th or 5th of this month. And then on the 9th of March, Mars enters Taurus. And Taurus and Libra are co-ruled by the planet Venus. And it's because our inner relationship to ourselves, Taurus, and our outer relationship to the world, Libra, is what reflects the essential needs. So as Mars moves into Taurus, we begin to then explore the nature of these internal needs. And for you, Capricorn, you're going to seeing these things of creative self-actualization, the experience of joy and fun, and what does it mean to live in a childlike state, okay? While getting in touch with your emotional nature. So a lot of things happening in your home, I wouldn't be surprised if that is how you feel. And when we move over to the 12th of March, we can see that at 22 degrees, we're going to have a full moon in Virgo. And it's interesting because to me, the full moon in Virgo represents the story. When you get a book and you read through it, you get a lot of insight, you learn some stuff. You don't strap the book to your body as a way of remembering the insights and information. You kind of just, put it aside, you let it go, and you go about your day. And insights and understanding that you might have gotten through that book is stored within your consciousness. And the same thing's applying over here. There was a solar eclipse that happened for us on the 25th, 26th of February. And that solar eclipse was in Pisces. It was a new moon, right? Just at the bottom over there, all in your third house. And now, of course, with this full moon taking place, we've reached a point in which this transition is taking place. So the new moon was about the beginning cycle of letting go, the cycle of completion. And the full moon is about taking all of the insights and beginning to integrate them into the new direction that we're having in this life. This new direction that is emerging for us, it's on the precipice. We're in this transition place, and what we bring with us is new wisdom, and we let go of the past in that sense. So this full moon is really about the transition of letting go and bringing insights. And you can see here that on the 13th of March, Mercury actually enters Aries alongside Jupiter and the moon making a conjunction. So these insights have now begun to be questioning. You're going to question things, right? Mercury and Aries communicating, and your mind is going to be set to out of that Pisces realm of fogginess and into the realm of, okay, so what do I need to explore this new direction? I'm being curious. I want to find new things out. I want to try new things out. And of course, the moon hitting Jupiter is creating this need to recognize what types of expectations of the past no longer serve you anymore, as a way of letting go. No longer being part of your essential needs, as it were. Okay, so then on the 20th of March, the sun enters Aries. Okay, and that's a big deal, because then again, the sun hits Saturn. Sorry, not the sun, pardon me, the moon. The moon hits Saturn. And the sun in Aries now begins to have a strong flashlight. And this flashlight into the 4th house, into the Aries archetype for you, is about, okay, now I've got the supporting energy along with my mind, along with the insights, and now I'm going to adjust my philosophy, right? What is the structure I want to use? What is the reality that I want to begin to influence and work through and put in place and lay the foundation for as this new direction begins to unfold for me? Okay, so more deeper insights. And then we move just 2 days later, the moon hits Pluto. You can see it in your solar 1st house. And of course, that solar 1st house again is about the unconscious emotional reality of evolving in a new direction, Capricorn. And as the moon hits that, this is a time when you just chill out, just stay at home, or, do what you need to do, but just recognize this is a day of extreme volatility, in my opinion. Okay, and that moon Pluto is going to say to us, okay, we've got the insights, we've got the process of the sense of new direction that we want, and we're really getting in touch with our essential needs in a big way. What is it that we finally need to mutate? What is the core root of this change that needs to change? And you're going to be fully aware of that in your psyche on the 22nd, and that's going to readjust yourself. It's going to be this process of pulling out the final root and moving forward. And then finally, 3 days later, the sun and Venus switch places. Look there. Okay, and the moon and the south node connect, and that's where the final process is going to take place, where it's, okay, now I know what to let go. I've seen the subconscious healing. I've recognized these patterns. I don't want to exist with them anymore. And now I'm going to forgive, and I'm going to forget, allow self-acceptance and compassion to myself, and release back into the ocean. Moon conjunct the south node in Pisces and Neptune. And the sun in Aries will say, okay, right, let's do this. Let's go in this new direction. I'm super excited. I'm amped for this. And of course, we have a new moon taking place in Aries, and that's when the whole entire evolutionary cycle, you can see, has shifted from how we started the month and how we ended the month. Everything's now in Aries, new beginnings, new exploration, new excitement. Let's go. And from that onwards, we have this new direction. We don't know what it is yet. We don't know how it's going to play out, but we know that we're wanting to pioneer it, and it's going to be really exciting as a way of evolving ourselves. So a very exciting month for us as we transition out of the old into the new. And hopefully where we land up on the beach at the end of this month will be exactly where we feel that we need to be. Okay. All right, Capricorn, hope you have a fantastic month. Don't forget the astrology school starting on the 11th of March. And like I said, in the description below is a link to join up. Okay. Other than that, take care. Bye-bye.